You're watching the New Stack Makers, a podcast for people who develop, deploy, and manage at-scale software. For more information and articles about at-scale technologies, please visit thenewstack.io. Now enjoy the show. Yasmin Rajabi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
So you just got acquired by CloudBolt. You have a title change. You were Chief Operating Officer at StormForge, and now you're the Chief Strategy Officer at CloudBolt. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Who in your family did you tell first? Who did you call? What did you say?
It's probably my husband. Because I work remote, so he knows what the last few months have been like.
Yeah.
And it felt really good to say hey, this is real. This is happening. Especially because how good of a fit the company is. And our whole team's excited about it. So definitely my husband. I probably explained it to my family, but how much of that they got, they're not very up on tech trends. But yeah, definitely my husband.
StormForge is essentially in the resource optimization world, right? What does a company like CloudBolt want to have to do with that? I mean, CloudBolt I associate with cost and, and like the cost of your infrastructure and such. So is that the intersection there?
Yeah, so CloudBolt is a FinOps platform, but what they are really strong and really push is continuous optimization of your entire estate. And so our focus on that problem specifically for Kubernetes is what kind of made this better together. We don't do as well on the cost reporting and visibility side because we do more of the action. And so that's part of the partnership that we're excited about, kind of augment more of the cost visibility. But then on the CloudBolt platform side, they look at all of your cloud infrastructure and give you the actions to go out and automate. So we're looking forward to taking our machine learning approach and applying it to the rest of cloud infrastructure.
So you previously were Vice President of Product at StormForge, and you had the role of Chief Operating Officer, and now you're going into a Chief Strategy Officer job. Are you an engineer by background?
So I did start in engineering back many years ago. As the engineering team at StormForge will tell you, they don't let me near the engineering. But I did start out as a developer and then was an SRE until I made the switch into product at Puppet, actually, because it was infrastructure automation. So my whole background has been infrastructure automation, just as that infrastructure evolves to now Kubernetes being the de facto platform. That's how I got here.
So you had to learn finance along the way.
Yes. So fun fact, my degree is actually in business.
Okay.
Which I think is nice for me of how you bring those two worlds together. Because at the end of the day, you can do anything you want from the engineering standpoint, but it has to impact the business. And so learning that early on was super helpful.
That must have been very helpful. Then why did you go into engineering?
Honestly, I did an internship once, and my mentor at the time taught me basic Perl scripting, and I was like, this is cool, I like this. And I always liked computers as a kid, so I just kind of fell into it and never got out of it, I guess.
Yeah. So you worked as an SRE for a while?
Yep.
Was that a few years ago, or when was that?
No, it was more than that. It was probably 15 years ago.
Wow.
So it's quite a bit, maybe not 15, 10-ish, between that time. It all blends. But yes, those were fun times.
Those are early days in SRE times.
So my manager at the time had come from Yahoo that really kind of started a lot of the early SRE movement and was very opinionated about that and helped implement it at our organization. And I got to learn a lot very early on.
Yeah, you must have learned so much. And now today, you're merging with CloudBolt. I just had a conversation with Dan Garfield of Octopus Deploy, and he says that things are changing a lot among users. What are some of the changes you're seeing among users? He talked about how the number of clusters is starting to scale. What are you seeing?
Exactly that. Every time I come to a KubeCon, the level of conversation goes more from theory to action, where people are before I was thinking about my day 2 Kubernetes operation, how I handle the large scaled systems. But now they're actually there and they're like, I need to solve this problem today. We work with customers that are churning over millions of containers a day. Like that's the scale they're operating at, hundreds of thousands of workloads. And for platform engineers that first got into Kubernetes, it was always hard to manage, but when the scale was smaller, it was at least manageable. Now that scale has gotten out of hand.
And so during that process, users learn a lot, right? They make mistakes, right? What are some of the things you see from users out there? What kind of mistakes do you see them make early on?
So the biggest thing, I see people kind of take this journey, because obviously we do resource optimization, so I see this a lot, where they'll start out and deploy their applications onto Kubernetes and not set requests. And they don't realize like that's something important on day one you should set. And so they deploy their apps and none of the workloads are actually promised any resources. So as different workloads need resources, they start to contend with one another, and then they have performance issues, maybe some downtime even. And then they'll kind of take the next step further of like, okay, well then I will set my request, but I don't know what to set it to. So they set it super high because no one wants to get paged in the middle of the night of like, hey, your workload's down. And so that's kind of the second mistake we see, of just like guessing really high. And then you get to the point of like, okay, well, it's really expensive. Now what do I do? And then you go manually try and solve the problem. So it's kind of a series of learn as you go type thing. And every step gets a little bit better, but still has some baggage to it. And I start to talk to users when they're at that like stage 3 of their journey of, okay, I have this problem. I've tried these different things. Here's where I'm at. I need help.
Yeah. It's like the complexity that comes when you have not just one additional cluster, but maybe 2 additional clusters, or even 3, or whatever, right? And then when you start having that, it's like any problem that you face, right? You have just more of it. So there's different solutions you have to think of. What are the more common problems you see then customers facing when they get to that point where they're like, maybe last year they had 2 clusters, maybe this year they have 4. What do you see when they start getting to a level where, they're far more advanced when they're making those initial mistakes?
Yep. So the folks that I usually interact with are in the like hundreds of clusters.
Okay.
So they've gotten from
let's talk about that then. So they've gone from 10 to 50 to 100 to 200 to
exactly.
400 clusters. Yep. What happens in that, like, when you get up into those ranges of 300, 400 clusters, what are the kind of the scale out issues that they face and the problems they face, and what are the mistakes they make when they face those problems?
Yeah. So from a scale standpoint, it's my build. Like, why do I have so many nodes? What do I need so many nodes for? Am I properly deployed out where like I don't have a ton of waste on my nodes? That's, I'd say, probably some of the biggest challenges that folks at that scale have. And cluster autoscaler is great. That's where people start. But then it's, how do I go reduce that node count and do it in a safe way? So they'll use a cluster autoscaler, and usually that safe part is the difficulty, because if you do things kind of manually, then you're bound to break something. And typically at that scale, I see a lot of Karpenter, for example, the open source project, that helps you right size, but also helps you bin pack and make sure that you are reducing the waste at the node level to allow you to consolidate the number of nodes, and then lets you take advantage of like Spot, for example, versus on demand. At that scale, you need to be kind of looking at what are all the flavors of instances I can have, and how do I make sure I'm doing it most efficiently?
At some point, though, it becomes unmanageable, doesn't it? Because that you can't just do it. You can't rely on the ways you could do it or when you first started out by some of the stuff was manually done.
Yeah.
Right? And this is where machine learning comes in, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's our whole background. So our company actually started first as a machine learning company and like looking for a problem. This was maybe almost 10 years ago. And then the initial problem we started solving was power optimization, so large data centers. And about that time is when Kubernetes started to kind of take hold. And so our backend was actually running on Kubernetes, and our founding engineer had to make some changes to kind of reduce this as the product scaled out, kind of reduce the nodes and the pods. And he's like, one, I never want to do this again. Two, it's a perfect problem for machine learning because it's standard structured data. And everyone's going to have this problem. So like the early team had that foresight now 5-6 years ago. Kubernetes was super immature back then, but now when you talk to people and we say, hey, how do you consider the trends in your traffic pattern? So the resources you need on a Monday are very different than Saturday. And even within the day, like that's going to be different. How do you take into consideration your scaling behavior? So you have the horizontal pod autoscaler, which adds and removes replicas. How do you consider that in how you're going to set your pods? Are you scaling on a custom metric? Are you scaling on a resource metric? There's a lot of factors that need to be pulled in. It's just too many things for humans. It needs to be machine learning.
So how are you advancing your machine learning offering, but also keeping in mind that maybe there's a lot of people out there who don't know a lot about machine learning?
Yeah, so the biggest thing for us from a product standpoint is the user experience and how you can interact with the machine learning. So anything that we recommend for folks, we also give them ways to constrain the machine learning. Make sure that the human feels like they're in control of what you'll get at the end of the machine learning machine. And we let folks interact with that via code. So we're speaking their language. So you can say like, how aggressive is the machine learning? Tell it, I never want a recommendation less than X amount. Don't deploy this unless that's there. Like, take a look at these additional considerations.
So user experience has to do with a lot of things. We learned this early on, in our development, and we went through a whole process where we learned that what our brand really was, right? Mm-hmm. And that really then defined the information architecture that we were going to build, right? And that then led us to the interactive and experience we wanted the customer to enjoy, right? Using your company as an example, how have you built your information architecture? What have you built into it that makes it a user experience that people will respect and be able to then use almost transparently, like it doesn't become a hindrance, it's more just like a part of the workflow?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our kind of philosophy around that is making sure we follow like Kubernetes standards and best practices. So from the data that we collect, like from cAdvisor and other KSM type metrics, making sure we're speaking the Kubernetes language, the way that we pull in those metrics and provide the recommendations and show you things at a cluster level, a namespace level, individual workload level, down to the container. Everything we do is following what Kubernetes does, even layering on top of existing tools. So like make sure you work with HPA, make sure you work with Kata, Cluster Autoscaler. If there's an open source, Argo, great example, because everyone's using that to manage code, Argo or Flux. We need to make sure that our machine learning works in that paradigm. It doesn't force users to think about things differently. If you understand Kubernetes, you don't have to think anymore to use our software.
So does that put you involvement in open source projects then?
It's a good question. It doesn't. We're not currently involved in any open source projects.
It's more like your pipeline, your data pipeline that you're building.
Yeah, and just making sure that we fit in the CNCF landscape.
Oh, with your solution.
Yes, exactly.
So what does that mean to fit into this landscape?
For us, it means to kind of what I mentioned of not force users to change their tooling, but really work with the tools that already exist. So Karpenter is a great example. If everybody uses that for
Karpenter's a great
Node,
example of that.
We need to work well with Karpenter, and we love that project. Like we love the folks behind it.
Okay, explain to people out there what Karpenter does.
Karpenter is a node autoscaling tool, so a great replacement for the cluster autoscaler, and helps you take advantage of a way that sometimes we pitch Karpenter also is that, one, it'll help you consolidate your nodes, but two, it's the easiest way to adopt Spot. So I talk to a lot of people that are like, oh, I think I want to start using Spot nodes, but I'm not sure, and like, how safe is it? Karpenter's a great kind of onboard to that as
Spot?
well. Spot versus like on-demand nodes.
Yes, but like that's AWS parlance, right?
Yes.
Spot.
Yes, yep.
Right. So you're talking about AWS.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. So So these users are going through this scale problem, right?
Yep.
They don't want to change their tools. So that's kind of a priority that you
Yes, yeah.
put
We
up.
don't want anyone to change how they work to have to work with us.
And what tools do you see them using?
HPA a lot. CADA is Argo CD. We see a little Flux too, but more Argo CD. Karpenter, I mentioned.
Yeah.
A lot of like auto scaling solutions.
And your information architecture, your technology stack is proprietary then with the ML capabilities.
The machine learning is proprietary, yep.
Okay. All right.
But the rest, honestly, our backend is all open source solutions. Our agent is Prometheus under the hood, so we try and use open source as much as we can.
When you're saying your agent, what are you meaning?
We have 2 pods that sit in the customer's cluster and scrape the metrics and then send them to our backend.
Send them to your backend. And then you then put that through your pipeline and present it through the UI.
Exactly. The data sits in a database. We do the machine learning on it, pull it out, and then show it to people in a UI.
So, again, like we're talking about, those users who've gone from like dozens of clusters to hundreds of clusters. What do they need from you when it comes down to like that auto scaling? So it's efficient.
Yep.
So it does the work instead of just like, oh, well, it tried to do the work, but it didn't really.
They honestly, they need a way to manage the exceptions. So at that scale, you can set defaults for the estate. It's like, okay, most of the time I want things to happen in this way, but you always have development teams that are like, nope, my application's a snowflake. I need it treated differently. Or there are certain workloads that like, for whatever reason, need to be treated differently. It's how do you allow a team to manage exceptions at scale so they don't have to think about them. And for us, we do that via layered configuration as code. But that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we see that at that scale, folks need to kind of wrap their head around. And our other philosophy is like, we don't want you to have to think about our product at all. It should be boring. It should happen behind the scenes. In the beginning, use it more to kind of use the UI to gain confidence. But once you're there, it should just be in the background and continuously right size.
I guess the last question I want to ask is about machine learning itself, because machine learning really is a subset of AI, right?
Sure.
And we're hearing lots of discussions about AI, right? Is machine learning on a innovation curve right now?
Yes. I mean, you say innovation, there's like fads also get kind of spun up in innovation, and I think there's a lot of real, but there's also a lot of seems cool right now, but how applicable will it be to the business? And I think for some folks, honestly, it's like kind of hard to weed out. Luckily, we have some really great PhDs on our team that help us kind of put a lot of structure into our approach of how we use the tools in our platform. But every day I see a new like LLM, agentic AI solution out there, and I use what I can in my day job to help me become more powerful. But there's also a lot of distractions, I'd say, out there.
Because you have to be deterministic entirely.
Yes.
And AI systems are non-deterministic.
Yeah, so that's what does make our machine learning algorithm, like it can't hallucinate. And because we're touching systems, we have to make sure that humans can always control the outcome, even if it's the machine learning that comes up with the value, because otherwise they're not going to have confidence in allowing us to deploy to production.
So agents don't apply?
The agentic AI does not apply. Something we've been toying with is how can we use that approach to give you insights on your infrastructure. So it's more insight-based than action-based. Because that's safer. We can tell you something. We're not going to go change something in your system, but there is a balance there when you're touching production workloads.
That's really interesting. So how will things change with CloudBolt?
In a few ways. I think the most straightforward one is we'll start to layer on cost visibility into our platform, especially actually pulling data from billing and the curve, because CloudBolt has that today. But I think the more exciting piece from a machine learning standpoint is how we take our approach to the rest of cloud infrastructure, so beyond Kubernetes.
Well, these are good times to be in your business, I think, with
Yes.
this scaling out of clusters. Congratulations on the
Thank you.
acquisition, and thanks for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on all the major social media platforms. You can always find us at thenewstack.io. We hope to see you soon.